have prayed this prayer your entire life. You may have prayed it this morning, or whispered it in a moment when nothing else made sense. Give us this day our daily bread. It sounds like a request. It sounds like a humble plea, someone asking just enough, just for today, just to survive. But what if everything you understood about this line was never the full picture? What if Jesus was not asking for anything at all? In the language he actually spoke, ancient Aramaic, this prayer does not function as a petition, it functions as an activation, a declaration, a frequency set in motion by the sound of a specific word that most translations have softened almost beyond recognition. The word that gets translated as daily is the word that holds the entire mystery, and when you hear its true meaning, something inside you will shift. The theologians debated this word for centuries. Early church scholars admitted they were uncertain how to translate it. Jerome, who gave the world the Latin Vulgate Bible, called it a word found nowhere else. He made a choice, and that choice shaped how billions of people would relate to provision, to abundance, and to the nature of what Jesus was actually releasing into the world. Because what Jesus encoded in the Aramaic was not a request for daily rations, it was an instruction for accessing a flow that is already moving. A stream of divine provision that does not run dry, does not have off-seasons, and does not depend on your economy, your circumstances, or your past. It depends on your alignment with the source. And the source has never stopped flowing. Stay with me, because by the time this teaching is finished, the Lord's Prayer will never sound the same again. The prayer everyone knows and almost no one understands. There is a prayer so familiar that entire congregations can recite it together, perfectly synchronized, without a single pause for thought. That familiarity is both its gift and its greatest danger. When words become automatic, they stop being alive. And the prayer that Jesus gave his disciples was never meant to be recited, it was meant to be inhabited. The passage comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 11, embedded inside what we call the Sermon on the Mount, one of the most concentrated teachings on spiritual law ever recorded. Jesus is not offering a formula for church services. He is responding to a specific question, teach us how to pray. And what he gives them is not a liturgy, it is a map. A living structure designed to align the one praying with the nature of the divine itself. Most people, when they reach the line about bread, instinctively enter a posture of scarcity. They hear it as, please give me enough for today. And while that reading is not wrong in spirit, it is drastically incomplete in meaning. It carries the invisible weight of lack. The assumption that provision is uncertain, that tomorrow is not guaranteed, that the divine must be convinced to release what it might otherwise withhold. But Jesus did not pray from scarcity. Jesus prayed from union. Everything he taught, every word he chose, operated from the assumption that heaven and earth are not separate realities. They are overlapping fields. And prayer, in his understanding, was not the act of reaching across a distance to beg. It was the act of aligning with what is already present and already moving. This is why the Aramaic matters so deeply. Greek, the language of most New Testament manuscripts, is a language of precision and philosophy. Aramaic is a language of resonance and relationship. It does not just define, it vibrates. And when Jesus spoke this prayer in Aramaic, every syllable was chosen not only for its meaning, but for what it does to the consciousness of the one who speaks it. The word at the center of this teaching is lakma. It is the Aramaic word that gets translated as bread, but its meaning extends far beyond any loaf. Lakma shares its root with the word for wisdom, for light, and for that which nourishes from the inside. Even in that single term, Jesus is pointing beyond physical sustenance towards something eternal, something that feeds the whole person, spirit, mind, and body together. To understand this prayer, you must first understand that Jesus was not speaking to hungry stomachs. He was speaking to hungry souls who had forgotten where the source of all nourishment truly lives, the word that changed everything and was almost lost. If you have ever looked closely at biblical translations, you may have noticed that translators occasionally place a small mark beside a word, a footnote, an asterisk, a quiet admission that something here is uncertain. The word epousios in Greek, which gets rendered as daily in English, carries one of those marks, and that mark contains a universe. Epousios appears exactly twice in all of ancient Greek literature, twice. Both appearances are in the Lord's Prayer, in Matthew and in Luke. Outside of those two passages, the word simply does not exist in any surviving Greek text. This is extraordinary. It means translators throughout history have been working with a word that has no comparable usage to draw from, no other context to illuminate it. They had to make their best guess. Jerome, the scholar who translated the scriptures into Latin around 400 AD, wrestled with this openly. He tried two different translations in two different versions. In the Gospel of Matthew, he used the Latin word for supersubstantial, meaning beyond substance, beyond the material plane. In the Gospel of Luke, he used daily, two completely different interpretations of the same word by the same scholar. That inconsistency was not an accident, it was honesty. He knew the word carried more than any single translation could hold. Now move backward, behind the Greek, behind Jerome's Latin, and arrive at the Aramaic root. The word Jesus, most likely used, was connected to the concept of asidutha, a term pointing toward continuity, toward that which is constantly present, without interruption, without pause. Not, give me enough for today, but release into my experience what is already continuously available. That is a completely different relationship with provision. This is not a theological technicality. This is the difference between living as a beggar at the door of heaven and living as an heir who has already been given access to the estate. Jesus said in John chapter 10 that he came so that we might have life and have it in abundance, not in measured drops, not in daily rations, but overflowing. The Lord's Prayer, read through its Aramaic frequency, is the practical activation of that abundance. Every time you speak it with understanding, you are not asking. You are aligning. You are tuning your inner state to the frequency of a flow that has no shortage. The tragedy is not that the truth was hidden. The tragedy is that it was translated into survival language when the original spoke the dialect of overflow. If you've made it this far, it was not by accident. Few are truly ready to go deeper, and that's perfectly fine. One more important note before you continue. The Aramaic spoken by Jesus carries layers of meaning that are closely connected to its sound, rhythm, and expression. Because of this, you may occasionally hear slightly different pronunciations of the same word. To help you experience the original teaching more clearly, we display the Aramaic word on screen, together with its pronunciation and its meaning. If you would like to explore these ancient teachings in greater depth, you'll find our study guides in the pinned comment below. With gratitude for walking this path together. The frequency of continuous flow and the best is yet to come. In the next chapters, you'll discover what could change everything for you. To fully grasp what Jesus was transmitting through this prayer, you must understand how Aramaic relates to the concept of time. In Western thinking, time is linear. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow is uncertain, and today is a narrow window between two unknowns. This linear perception is precisely what creates the psychology of scarcity. If today is all you have, then "give me enough for today" feels like the most responsible request you can make. When you place lachma, the nourishment, the wisdom bread, the light sustenance, inside that Aramaic understanding, the prayer transforms completely. You are no longer asking for a daily ration. You are declaring alignment with a provision that is perpetually in motion. The river does not decide each morning whether it will run. It runs because that is its nature, and the source Jesus points to shares that same nature, faithful, continuous, inexhaustible. This is why Jesus could look at his disciples, men with no financial security, no institutional backing, and tell them not to be anxious about food or clothing. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, verses 25 through 33, he points to birds who neither plant nor harvest, yet are fed. He points to wildflowers clothed in more beauty than Solomon's royal robes. He is not teaching passive indifference. He is teaching attunement. The source that clothes and feeds all of creation is the same source available to you, and it has never failed a single morning. The Aramaic root behind this continuous flow connects directly to the concept of manna, the mysterious provision that appeared each morning in the wilderness for 40 years. Not because the people were perfect, because the source is faithful. Jesus was pointing every person who would ever pray this prayer back to that same frequency. Not survival, not rationing, but a continuous, faithful, inexhaustible flow of everything the soul requires to live fully and carry out its purpose. The question is never whether the flow is available. The question is always whether you are aligned with it. Why your abundance has been blocked, and how to reopen the channel. Understanding the Aramaic frequency is one thing, living it is another. Between those 2 points, between intellectual revelation and embodied reality, there is almost always a gap. For most people, that gap is not filled with doubt about whether God can provide. It is filled with something older, quieter, and far more persistent, an internal frequency of lack set long before they ever prayed a single prayer. Neuroscience now confirms what mystics have long understood. Beliefs formed in early childhood, especially around safety and provision, become the lens through which all future experience is filtered. A child raised in chronic scarcity does not simply think about lack. They become attuned to it. Their inner world learns to anticipate shortage, to distrust abundance when it arrives, and to unconsciously recreate the familiar feeling of not having enough. This is not weakness. It is a mind that adapted to survive. But Jesus was not offering a survival framework. He was offering transformation. The Aramaic verb structure behind give us is hablan. It does not carry the energy of a beggar's outstretched hand. Hablan means cause to flow toward us, release into our field, let it move through us. It assumes the flow already exists. The prayer is not a summoning of something withheld. It is an opening of the channel, a declaration that you are positioned to receive what is already in motion. This distinction changes everything. When you pray from lack, you place yourself outside the flow and ask to be let in. When you pray from the Aramaic frequency, when hablan becomes an alignment rather than a petition, you are declaring that you are already inside the source. You are not separated from the river, you are in it. The blocks are never on God's side. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 11, verse 13, Jesus says that if imperfect earthly parents know how to give good gifts to their children, how much more will the Heavenly Father give to those who ask? The Father is not withholding. The issue is always on the receiving end, not because we are unworthy, but because we are misaligned. Every fear about provision, every belief that says there is never enough, these are not facts, they are frequencies, and frequencies can be changed. You were not made to survive on the edge of enough. You were made to live inside the overflow. Thank you for getting this far. If the awakening of consciousness is hitting you hard, it's a sign that you're ready to go deeper. The study guides are waiting for you in the pinned comments. The Transformation Protocol, Praying the Aramaic Way. What changes first is not your circumstances. What changes first is your posture. Every morning, before your mind fills with the noise of the day, there is a window a brief, luminous space between sleep and full waking consciousness where the inner frequency is most open to reset. Jesus knew this. The Gospels repeatedly place him in early morning solitude before everything else began. That was not coincidence. That was protocol. Begin there. In that window, before you check your phone or rehearse your worries, speak this prayer, not as recitation, but as activation. Feel the word lakma, not as a request for bread, but as a declaration of your connection to the source of all nourishment. Feel hablan not as begging, but as opening, a conscious widening of the channel through which divine provision already flows. Then carry that frequency into how you see your day. When lack thoughts arise, and they will, do not fight them. Simply return to the awareness that the source has not stopped flowing, that the river is still running, that your alignment is the only variable. Jesus did not teach this prayer so it could be spoken once a week inside a building. He placed it inside the Sermon on the Mount, the most practical spiritual teaching ever recorded, because it was meant to be lived daily as an inner orientation toward abundance rather than survival. The Aramaic word shafir captures this beautifully. It means overflowing, pouring forth without restraint. That is the life Jesus described. That is the frequency this prayer was designed to activate in you, not someday, not conditionally, but now. I am glad you are here, and I mean that deeply. The fact that you are seeking this knowledge tells me everything about where you are in your journey. Study guides with deeper teachings are waiting for you in the pinned comment below, with gratitude for walking this path together. Before you leave, if this message touched your heart or brought new understanding into your life, write the word lakma in the comments below. Your testimony may encourage someone else who is seeking healing and renewal.